You know socialism isn't going well when your country is coming up with a propaganda campaign to convince you to eat your pets. We're going to be talking about that on this episode of Stopping Socialism TV. Before we get into Venezuela's rabbit plan, I do want to encourage those that are watching us on YouTube to hit that subscribe button. YouTube and Google, they're not doing us any favors by getting our content out there. So if you want to be able to share this content with more people and show them how bad socialism is, hit that subscribe button and get a little more Stopping Socialism in your recommended videos. Justin, the Venezuela's rabbit plan. I believe I brought this to your attention originally, right? You
I
were
think
unaware
so.
of this? Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
So this is a little segment that is out of Arguing with Socialists, a book that came out pretty recently authored by Glenn Beck. Justin and I were contributors to that book, but we wanted to do a video specifically on this little subsection here. So I'm just going to go ahead and read it, and then we can kind of discuss. So it says, to help grapple with the rampant hunger and starvation sweeping through the country, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro instituted the so-called Rabbit Plan, which encouraged citizens to raise and breed rabbits for their animal protein. In some cases, the government supplied rabbit kittens to communities to help kickstart the scheme. The plan quickly ran into setbacks due to supposed cultural problems. Minister of Urban Agriculture, Freddie Bernal, explained he found that people started to treat the animals like pets, even putting bows on their new rabbits. Quote, a lot of people gave names to the rabbits and took them to bed, said Bernal. To rectify this problem, Bernal suggested an education campaign to make the rabbit plan effective. Quote, we need a publicity campaign on radio, TV, in newspapers, in cartoons, everywhere, so that the people understand that rabbits aren't pets, but 2.5 kilos of meat. Like this,
Great.
I mean, if I think people that are watching this know that Venezuela has kind of turned into a socialist hellhole. Instead of, and when this happens, when, countries, whatever, experiment with socialism and it fails, which it always does, they have two options. One is to backtrack, free up markets, induce, freedom and free, individuality, or they could double down. That's what Venezuela did here. They doubled down and initiated the rabbit plan. So, Justin, why do you like this story so much?
I mean, what's so great about this is, in addition to just being absurd and just hilarious, what's great about it is that you've got a government that knows that there is such a radical problem with the way that things have been run, that they have to actually give people rabbits.
Yeah.
And the people of Venezuela are so lonely and sad that they make those rabbits pets and instead of killing them, and then they have to convince the people to kill them because people are starving and they desperately need animal protein. And it's just like it's so sad. I mean, it's hilarious and on one level, but it is so incredibly sad that this is what this country, which at one time 60, 70 years ago was one of the wealthiest countries in the world per capita, and is now relegated to this just horrible, just sad state of affairs. We've got people being told to kill their pets that they're sleeping with in bed at night because, you got to eat your meat, guys. You're not going to survive if you don't do this. And then, of course, just the whole idea that you need a minister of urban agriculture,
Yeah.
which just in and of itself is insane, right? Like we gotta get people growing things in the city, and raising animals, farm animals in the city. Like that's just sad in and of itself. It's just such a horrible place because the government has completely mismanaged it. And if they had just backed off even a little bit, things would have stabilized maybe, but no, they kept doubling down to keep their power, and they did whatever it took. And then you end up with these kinds of absurdities where now the government has to central plan all the way down to your meat protein. and what pets you have. It's so pathetic and sad what's become of this place.
Yeah, no doubt. And like, like the concept, and people talk about it being like a logical fallacy, like the slippery slope argument. And it's just like, if 10 years in advance of this story, if someone would be like, if we keep going down this road, we're eventually going to have to kick off some government sponsored propaganda campaign convincing people to eat their pets. Like, get out of here. That's a joke. Stop fear mongering. But nope. One thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, and now you've got the Minister of Urban Agriculture literally saying that we need to create cartoons to convince people to eat their pet rabbits.
Yep.
Like, that's how far socialism gets when it's left unabated.
Yeah, and the thing that kills me about this is that there's so many people out there who think things like this, they sound so crazy and outlandish. Like, oh, this would never, ever happen in like the civilized world. Like this would never, this was the civilized world. That's the thing. It was. They were one of the top, I think they were fourth. It was like, they were in the top 10 wealthiest countries in the entire world per capita, in the entire world. And in just several decades, they went from that to this. And there are other countries too that we've seen these total collapses. It's not just in Central America or South America. We've also seen this in Europe, and we've seen this all over the world where these societies are relatively well functioning. And then all of a sudden you get these socialist, centralized, planned economies in place, and then everything just completely falls apart. And it really is not as hard to believe as people might think. I mean, Russia had its issues for sure prior to the Soviet Union, but you didn't have the government choosing deliberately to mass starve their own people like they did in Ukraine, for example, when they took over Ukraine and they just starved millions of people. I mean, you didn't have that kind of thing going on. I mean, who would have ever thought, even among the socialist revolutionaries, who would have ever thought that they would come to that, right? Like, who would have ever dreamed that that would be a thing? We're going to starve our own people. I mean, these kinds of things, it's never as bad as what everyone thinks it can't happen to them. But give it enough time and it can happen to anyone. We've seen this throughout the course of human civilization, whether it's Rome, whether it's England, whether it's all these different places where they've had their moments where they've been at the top of the world and then something that seemed inconceivable happened.
Sure.
And that's, I mean, if that's the lesson of human civilization. All the most powerful nations that have ever existed are no longer the most powerful nations in the world. Even ones that lasted for hundreds of years, eventually lost control. They eventually went the wrong direction. Rome was completely destroyed by people who were much more inferior in terms of their technology and in terms of their wealth and everything else. They called them barbarians. There's a reason for that, because they just weren't nearly as civilized as the Roman society, and yet they got conquered by them. I mean, it can happen to anybody. And if you continuously make bad decisions and you continuously centralize your power and authority in the hands of people who are totally incompetent, which is pretty much everybody who gets in these roles, if you continue going in that direction, you will find yourself in a horrible situation. And unless you're arguing that we are somehow, as Americans, superior to other races of people or other cultures, which I don't think is something that the left wants to say.
Yeah, be careful if you're going to go down that path.
Right, exactly. Do you really want to say that there's something about Venezuelans that make them more likely to fall into this trap? No, I'm not saying that. I think that they're people just like me, and this could happen to me in my society, in my country, just like it happened in theirs. But if it can't happen here, why can't it happen here? That's the thing.
I just had this like momentary flash of like 30 years in the future, and like the Minister of Urban Agriculture, AOC, is trying to convince us that we need to eat our pet rabbits that they just gave to us last year. So yeah, I think it could happen. It's just, we gotta stray away from going on the path of socialism. That is for sure. we could probably go on. The other facts that kind of revolve around this are a little too dark. A little too dark to get into. I don't think we can really make light of some of these stories, like what happened to some of these zoo animals and stuff. We're just going to ignore that for now. We'll stick to the rabbit plan. There's some comedy in there, but I think that should do it for this segment of Stopping Socialism TV. If you want to see more videos like this, go to our YouTube channel, Stopping Socialism TV. You could also find a lot of our content on our website, stoppingsocialism.com. We also post pretty much everything on Facebook. Just find our page, Stopping Socialism. We have an Instagram account, we have a Parler account, we have a Twitter account, so you can find us on pretty much all of social media. Justin, where can the people find you?
At Justin T. Haskins on Facebook and Twitter.
All right. Thank you all for joining us.